We are live.
Okay, so here is the corridor model.
Hang on. I don't see anything but the Nolte logo and your desktop.
Okay,
You're on dual.
that's going to be on the second screen.
There
See
you
it now?
are. There we go.
Okay, so this is the corridor model. The way we set it up is the alignments are in a separate drawing, and then they're data referenced into this drawing. The surface is the white boundary here, and that's also stored in an external drawing, and that's data referenced into this file. So
Now
this
that's.
drawing here just contains the corridor here, and then the assemblies down here, and then the cross sections.
Can I ask a question on that? Now the surface model, your surveyors are actually doing that in Land Desktop, correct?
Yes, well, this was a project that started a couple years ago, so I imported all the data from LDT 2007,
Okay.
the surface and the alignments. In fact, the surveyors are supposed to go out and get some more point data for the surface maybe next week, and then I'm going to have to add that onto our model here.
Okay. All right. Well, so why don't you start? Like, show some of the assemblies that you guys are using for this to give them kind of a handle on what this looks like.
Sure.
You know, and maybe this is where Brandon can explain some of this.
Right.
Are you ready?
Yeah, here's the simplest one.
Oh.
I want to see the most complex one.
Let's see, we've got some that add some walls, some barriers, and then
That's probably it right there, one of those.
yeah.
Okay. Can you give on your desktop, can you give keyboard and mouse to Brandon? There's on your GoToWebinar, there's a button there. Give that to Brandon, and that way we can let Brandon kind of walk us through how this thing was put together a little bit, maybe what some of the sub-assemblies are and some of the issues you had on that.
Make presenter?
No. You want to, there's a button next to that should say give keyboard and mouse.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay.
And that'll give it to him. Yeah, if you make him presenter, then we no longer share your desktop.
I see.
Okay, I see that I can take it, but I have no idea how.
It should pop up and say, there
I
you
have
go.
the power.
You now have controls.
Okay. Well, the basic premise, like Dave said earlier, was that the project has, you know, it's outside widening only. However, in order to stake it and run sections showing the corridor, it has to be done on the same assembly, basically. So in order to do that, what these all have is a common, they all have the same baseline, which is the center one here. And then they have offset assemblies for left and right, depending on, you know, what the particular condition is for that section. And then there's a, you know, a fair amount of copy-paste between, you notice that these two here are basically the same, except that on the left side there's a cutter fill condition versus retaining wall. So there's a lot of step, you know, they're not all created from scratch. One's copied up, and then, you know, one piece would change on it. See, that's pretty common. This one here goes basically the same way. It's got the cut fill on the left and the right instead of having, oh, damn it. This sound wall over here just has a simple cut slope. Let's see, any issues? One issue that came up was that when you do the copy-paste thing and add stuff in, the order of assembly in the corridor, or sorry, in the assembly properties becomes very important. There's like a build order. Am I getting that right, David?
Yeah, why don't you go into this,
Yeah.
one of the assembly properties and show us.
The construction, that's what it's called. Where the hell did it go? Is it on the other screen?
Yeah.
Can you move it?
Yeah, I'll move it for you.
Yeah. And you
There
probably
we
have
go.
to, and, oh, good.
So each offset has its own group by definition. You can't stick them together. But when you like copy it and start creating new bunches that come with it, it may create new groups. And if they're not in a sensible order, like if you have something that's going from pavement that's in one group to a shoulder that's in another to a cut fill that's in the first group, the cut fill line gets all screwed up because it tries to build it before the shoulder has already been done. And in this one that came up was that this sound wall here has a link to marked point. That's the way the sound wall has basically the elevation is controlled by the OG. Whereas the pavement, let's see if we can make you see it in here. There we go. Whereas this wall has a height that's sort of independent, and then it's supposed to have the slope in between the two of these. So there's a marked point on this sort of channel behind the wall, and this link to marked point that goes to that. I tried doing it the other way first with the link at the channel and the mark point on the sound wall at the OG basically, and it just wouldn't do it because when it got there it didn't know the mark point hadn't been created yet, so it would just go 10 feet over or something like that and just stop. Let's see what else came up. There are a couple issues with link codes on things that you had to make certain, normally a particular link will have like top and datum codes on it, but for some things, like this sort of arbitrary amount of fill that's in here, make sure that the top one is the top and the bottom one is the bottom. Let's see, all of the widths, let's see if I can get up to the corridor here. You guys lost my boundary.
I erased it.
Someone erased the boundary.
I
All of
didn't
the widths
erase
of
it.
everything, like the traveled way and shoulders, are controlled by alignments. They can also be controlled by polylines, but since they already had alignments, that's fine. And that controls all the tapers and so on. The existing edge of pavement is actually used as the insertion point for the offset assemblies that those, well, the offset assemblies, I guess is the only really way to say that. I think that's pretty much the basics of it.
Yeah, can we go look at
And
some?
then I created a nice boundary around it just by using a polyline that Dion erased.
No, the polyline's there. We just haven't. We redefined the surface and some of the tapers changed. So he was going to edit the polyline and reapply it. I just don't think he's done that yet.
Okay. Oh yeah, and for sample lines, there are right-of-way alignments. So the sample lines are just controlled by going to the right-of-way lines.
Oh, that's why they go all the way.
Helpful.
Is that why they're Is that why they're so wide right where you're at there? That they're following those green lines or the right of way?
You got it.
Okay. So, but what he's done now is by doing that all in a single assembly with the assembly offsets, you'll see that he's got nice sections every 50 feet or whatever it is through this model, and both left and right widening, and then walls or whatever will show up in there. But yeah, let's go look at some of the cross sections. It'd be nice if you find one where you have the walls and everything.
Crap. Yeah.
So
there you go. You can see that this stuff on the outside is due to the boundary being turned off.
Yeah, so it doesn't have
You
a
can see
boundary.
that You do have problems with the top and datum sometimes, so we may need to add some more marked points and just call them top.
Not points, but links, right?
Correct, sorry.
Yeah.
But other than that, they look like they came through pretty well.
Yeah, what they did, their retaining walls, they don't have a datum on the footing of the wall. They just have toe a wall to top a wall, and that's, for earthworks, it's probably close enough.
Yeah.
Unless you're building huge, massive footings. But they kind of intended it to be that way.
Well, that'd be a structural X quantity anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we're actually working on getting the correct wall heights and footing heights. I guess Brandon had just put in a standard height for each wall, but now we're calculating, all the different heights for each wall, and then we're going to go back and then rerun these sections. And I think probably the way we'll do it is by creating a finish grade profile for the top of the wall,
Yeah, and then just
apply
assign.
that.
Yeah.
Apply it to the assembly. And then when we run the sections again, it'll find the top of each wall, and then it'll move it up or down.
Okay, well, cool. A couple of things helping Dion out, just issues that we ran across in terms of editing the assemblies. You got to really watch. You cannot use AutoCAD move and copy commands to move pieces of the assembly around, because we ran into a couple. I'm not really sure how they were constructed, but when we deleted internal sub-assemblies, if it was built right, it should close the gap and heal itself. You saw that listing that Brandon had showing all the assembly properties and the construction, how they were all in order. If you delete one out of the middle of the list there, the list it'll close up. You can't edit that list, but you actually physically edit them in the drawing. And we had some that just didn't close up right, and we ended up having to delete them and then rebuilding those one or two sub-assemblies on there. The other thing that Dion came across, and not to make fun of Dion, that I do, the only reason I know the answer is because I do it all the time too, is if you change your daylight assembly after you've already processed your corridor, you have to go back into the corridor properties and reattach the links. I've probably done that a couple dozen times now, where I'll edit it and then I'll go back and look at my sections and say, oh, geez, I don't have any daylight. Well, it's because I changed my daylight subassembly. You have to go back into the corridor properties, go to your set targets, and tell your daylights that you want to target your existing ground surface, and then your corridor will reprocess and you'll have daylight lines again. So we had those kind of issues on there. So, but overall, I'm pretty impressed with the model they built. Lots of lessons learned, especially in terms of being able to see that entire roadway in a single section view. I think is the big thing that Brandon came up with on how to, do that single baseline and just have those assembly offsets in here to build these complex corridor models, where in the past, without assembly offsets, you would have done each edge of pavement or each widening piece as a separate baseline. And it could be in the same corridor model, but they'd be separate baselines. But then the problem you run into is the sampled sections don't line up, and you can only view one or the other. Another item that came up with this design, which is an unfortunate, is that the view edit corridor sections command does not work with the assembly offsets. It's too complex. I don't think it knows how to draw it. I'm not sure what's going on, but we could not get that command to work in this drawing file. So that's why they plotted all the sections, so at least they could come in here and view and see what's going on with that model as they make changes to their corridor. So anybody have any questions for them? Again, very nice. Thank you, guys. Nope, all's quiet. All right. Well, I'm going to